President Van Rompuy, dear Rector Mogherini, dear Federica, Mayor Defoe, but first and foremost, dear faculty and staff of the College of Europe, and most importantly, dear students of the Jacques Delors promotion and the European Diplomatic Academy. It is a great pleasure to be here with you for the opening of the 75th academic year of the College of Europe. You are coming from all across our continent and beyond, each of you with a different story, a different background, and with a different path that led you here. But I'm sure that all of you, and I witnessed what you said today, have something in common. You care deeply about Europe, and you have chosen to get involved in shaping its future. If this is why you are here, you have made the right decision. The College of Europe is not only the oldest post-grad institute of European studies, it is also the place where students don't only learn about European integration, but live it. We heard about the almost 50 nationalities that are assembled here. Or just go through the impressive list of alumni. You will, as you know, find heads of states and prime ministers, commissioners and ministers, but you will also find several members of my staff. The college has raised generations of changemakers. And it begins with the post-war generation, which brought together countries divided by centuries of war. Then the post-Cold War generation, which brought together the two halves of our continent. And today's leaders' generation is trying to complete this process to finally bring all of Europe together. And this is the uniqueness of Europe. Each generation has made it grow, deepen and widen, and pass it on to the next. And the next generation is you. You will have the responsibility to move our union forward once again. Whether you will come to Brussels or go back to your native country, whether you will join the institutions or go to the private sector, whether you will be involved in politics or in civil society, you will be called to lead Europe and to serve the people of Europe. Everything you will learn this year will help you get ready for this. Leadership and public service. And I'd like to keep this in mind whenever you face a tough exam or a long day in the library. You're not only studying the Europe of yesterday and today, you are preparing to build the Europe of tomorrow. But what does it mean to lead and serve Europe? Every year, the college chooses indeed a patron, and this year the choice of Jacques Delors is more than a commemoration. It is a compass. When Delors took office, the world was changing at incredible speed. It was the world of Reaganomics and the final years of the Cold War. Europe was stuck in a so-called Eurosclerosis. When Delors left office 10 years later, Europe was not just keeping up with the changing world, Europe was making history with a new political union, a new single market, and with membership rising from 9 to 15 and beyond. Since I took office at the European Commission, I have often been inspired by the life and legacy of Jacques Delors. And this continues to be the case at the start of my second mandate. So today I would like to focus on 3 lessons from Jacques Delors about leadership in Europe. Lessons for my generation and for yours. Here's the first lesson. What yesterday seemed impossible can become reality tomorrow. Delors was a true leader because he understood, before others, when the times were ready for change. That was the case in 1989. Already 1 month before the fall of the Berlin Wall, Delors said it was time to, and I quote, move beyond Yalta and overcome the divisions of the old continent, end of quote. Some thought he was daydreaming. But in reality, he was 1 step ahead of everybody else. Delors oversaw 2 enlargements of our union, and he prepared the ground for the great reunification of 2004, when 10 countries joined our union. He truly made the impossible come true. Today, Europe stands at another turning point, just like in 1989. History is on the move again. There is a new momentum across Europe to unify our continent. And just last weekend, dear Federica, we saw the enthusiasm of the young people of the Western Balkans who cannot wait to join our union. And further to the east, the wind of change is blowing again. The people of Ukraine are fighting not only for their survival, but for Europe. This is what keeps them going after 1,000 days of Russia's full-scale war. They want their children to live free from fear and to grow up in a united and peaceful Europe. And no one should stand in their way at their aspirations. There is not a single reason why Putin should have a say in the future of young Ukrainians or Moldovans or Georgians. For so many years now, the people of Georgia have been striving and fighting for democracy. They have a right to know what happened this weekend, and they have a right to see that electoral irregularities are investigated swiftly, transparently, and independently. Georgians, like all Europeans, must be the masters of their own destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, completing the union has returned to the top of our political agenda during my first mandate, and it will be even more central now in my second mandate. It is in this spirit that last weekend we inaugurated together a new campus in Tirana. And today I can also announce a new initiative here in Bruges. The College of Europe and the Commission will launch a new program for young diplomats from future member states based on the model of the European Diplomatic Academy. One day, not so far, we will all be part of one union with one common foreign policy. So we should start training today a new generation of diplomats for the union of tomorrow. I know that some are skeptical because of the uncertainties that are linked to Russia's continued aggression against Ukraine and the costs of enlargement. But the costs of an incomplete union is way higher. The cost of fragmentation and less prosperity, the cost of war and instability at our borders, the cost of interference within our borders. And it would send a message to autocrats across the world that brute force can break the free will of free people. We simply cannot let this happen. And at the same time, think about the impressive progress that a country like Ukraine has achieved in recent years. They have passed an incredible set of reforms, reached candidate status, started accession negotiations. All of this while fighting a war for their survival. There is a well-known definition of politics as the art of the possible. Well, this is not enough. Sometimes, when history calls, politics must be the art of making even the impossible come true. We must dare to aim high. The second lesson from Delors that I would like to address is this. Europe is a constant work in progress. Just a few years after history had been written in Maastricht, Delors was already thinking about the next step. And before he left the presidency, he laid out his vision on how the Maastricht Treaty could be rolled out and pushed further. For European integration, there is no such thing as mission accomplished. Our union is never perfect, but it is perfectible. And Europe needs to be present when it is most required. That is exactly what Europe did when we set up Next Generation EU to address the consequences of a devastating pandemic. And when Russia tried to blackmail us with our overdependency on cheap and dirty fossil fuels, we joined forces and broke free. We bought energy together, using our critical mass of 27 member states to have more market power. And we invested massively in renewable energy that is clean, homegrown energy, and good jobs for Europe. As a result, in the first half of this year, more than 50% of our electricity has come from renewables. But our job is far from over. And 30 years into the single market, our economic union is still far from complete. Our competitors have continent-sized economies, with continent-sized markets and state budgets. A startup from California can expand and raise money all across the United States. But our companies still face way too many national barriers that make it hard to work Europe-wide, way too much regulatory burden. While 300 billion euros of European household savings are invested in foreign markets every year, we still have fragmented capital markets. And this is why we want to build a European savings and investments union, a deep and liquid capital markets union, a decarbonized and circular economy, and one single market. Simpler, faster, and more sustainable. And this will be one of our main missions for the 5 years ahead. The path that started 70 years ago must continue. must continue towards a prosperous and fair Europe. And this leads me to the third and final lesson of Jacques Delors. He was the architect of the single market and the euro, but he always thought that economic integration was not enough. In his own words, Europe needs a soul. And he meant that our union had to reach out to the hearts and minds of Europeans. Delors believed in the power of symbols. He was the first president to celebrate Europe Day and to raise our blue flag with golden stars outside the Berlaymont. Delors wanted all Europeans to feel pride for our values of peace and democracy, to feel a sense of belonging to a community of destiny. But beyond symbols, he believed that Europe needed a social anchor. The freedom of the markets had to come with protection of workers across Europe, and this is still true today. The people of Europe expect, rightly so, that our union will stand at their side in times of need. And this is exactly what we did time and again in the recent years, when we made sure that all Europeans could have access to life-saving vaccines, when we saved their jobs together in pandemic times with SURE, and when we acted together against the impacts of climate change, from forest fires to floods and droughts. This is European solidarity at its best. Yes, the people of Europe want our union to stand up for them on the global stage, but they also want our union to stand close to them, to protect them as a partner and an ally in their daily battles. We must have the courage to step out of our comfort zone and, if necessary, to step into new fields of action. And this is why, for the first time ever, I have put housing on the European agenda. Young people like you are struggling to find affordable homes, and this is just not right. I want Europe to look into this and to help unlock the private and the public investment we need. If it matters to you, it must matter to Europe. Or think about the crucial issue of mental health that I know is especially dear to young people. Of course, family and friends and the medical system are the first line of help. But there's so much that Europe can do. For instance, by addressing the addictive design of some social media platforms and the plague of cyberbullying. Some may say that health or housing are not European issues. Some may say we should not get involved. But I want our union to step up whenever it can make a difference and where it matters the most to people. You can do business and make money all over the world, wherever you want. But where do people want to settle and raise their children? Where the streets are safe, where they have prospects, where everyone has access to good education and culture, regardless of how much money they have. Where everyone has access to health care, where there's lasting peace, where they can move freely, study, work, across borders that no longer exist. where they can build something that stays theirs, where the rule of law wins and not the right of might. And that is what our union is and what our European Union stands for. Because Europe is more than a union, it is our home. And to me, this is the greatest lesson of Jacques Delors. The fundamental feature of leadership is not to rise above others, but to be at the service of others. Leadership and public service are two sides of the same coin. And so, I go back to where I started. You are the next generation of European leaders. Europe will need all of your talent and your passion. But how you will contribute to European projects is entirely up to you. Here in Bruges, you will get the tools you need. You will get a great understanding on how our union works. But always keep in mind who it works for and why it exists. Because Europe only works if it works for the people of Europe. So at the end of this year, take a moment to think about the way ahead. Think about all the different ways to do something for Europe. And find the one that makes you happy. Where you can put your talents to good use. Do not look for the fastest way to reach the top. Think about how best you can serve Europe and its people. This is what leadership means. This is how you will lead our union forward. So, best of luck to all of you and long live Europe. Thank you.